Don't believe in yourself. Huh? Believe in
The law. They aren't just provisions or arbitrary rules. They're the
Contract with a new magical girl. Yeah, but if we're fighting...
Kill a robot from the future. The only difference is that we don't have...
The 8-time record setter for home runs in the Monkey League?
If you've ever watched a video on this channel before, you likely know it's completely dedicated to really overanalyzing the heck out of anime, and sometimes it almost feels a little bit odd to do that, to really dig so deep into these stories, because at the end of the day, people might say that they're just fiction, so there really isn't a point to it. But all these stories are based on real people and real world experiences. If not directly, that's what influenced them, conscious or not. They impact us, they can bring us together, they can tear us apart, they can teach us things. And I've never really collected all my thoughts on how impactful stories can be, despite saying it a lot of times across many videos at this point. So this is a little bit of kind of trying to prove my own point and put a few more examples and a bit more logic to that point I've been making, that stories can be really impactful, by sharing 5 anime and how they really have genuinely changed my life. But anyway, I hope this will be an interesting experience for you, because it certainly has been for me over the course of 7 or so years now. So let's go ahead and get you into it. There's only one place I really could start a video on the series that changed my life, and that's with the anime that kicked it all off for me, Psycho Pass. Roll back about 7 years. I'd nearly flunked my literature courses in high school. I half-assed my way through a philosophy elective in college because it was the only one I could take, and I watched mostly mindless YouTube content in my spare time. Everything which now defines this channel, a love for analysis, philosophy, narrative, didn't exist yet in my life. But that all changed sometime around the summer of 2018 when I picked up this little known anime called Psycho Pass, and I can confidently say that it's what brought everything you know this channel for into my life. The cyberpunk setting caught my attention, pulling me along just enough for the charisma of Shogo Makishima to catch it even more, which then allowed Shinya Kogami to shine through their deepening rivalry, all of which takes place upon the backdrop of the Sybil system, their method for reading people's intentions and stopping crimes before they can even be committed. While it's shown to be quite authoritarian, it allows Japan to stand as the only peaceful country remaining in 2112. The give and take raises questions about society as a whole, if what they're giving up for safety is a worthwhile deal. Makishima questions such a system, tests if it's robbing society of free will, and upon receiving evidence he takes as proof it is, decides that such a system is wrong, for what is a man if not judged by his free will? Kogami, despite being his rival, furthers this proof by acting as one of the few people to exercise such a will and chasing his delighted rival against the rule of his society's overlord. It's the classic case where utilitarianism and deontology clash. Is it the ends or the means which determines right or wrong? This is the exact question the class I blew off centered around, but Psycho Pass made it deeply engaging and personal. Naturally, the series never answers, instead leaving us to ponder the question ourselves with its protagonist, Akane Tsunemori, a character who I never even paid proper attention to until 3 years later, because the series is so packed full of depth. While those already mentioned aspects of the series introduced me to the concepts and depth of story and everything like that I now love, changing my life once, Akane changed it in another way. She brings a new idea of society into the mix, summed up best by the famous line, "The law doesn't protect people, people protect the law." In a rough summary, this theory is that the law is weak. It's simply an abstract concept that only has power if followed and believed in by humanity. It represents the point of society, a trade-off of free will for freedom, a concept I explored in full here. But this philosophy from the anime became one I genuinely live my life by. I now recognize the importance of acting in accordance with laws which protect my freedom and acting against those which don't. It was something I never considered before Psycho Pass, but it was able to make me consider it by tying it to a story and a character I came to care for. I took their ideas to heart because I was invested in who they were. I started to see parts of myself in them. They're very real characters. A tightly packed and well-written story has that kind of power to make characters who exemplify important concepts in complex yet perfectly understandable and interesting ways. Madoka Magica is one of the series that helped light my fire for anime. I can't remember when I first watched it, but I remember absolutely loving how well it showcased the power of animation as an imaginative medium while also being exceptionally relatable. While I could spend time here on the series overall, I think it's best to collect some of my recent thoughts on Sayaka. I think she's quite possibly one of the most exceptional characters in all of anime because she's a look at problems we all face taken to the extreme, allowing for something unique yet perfectly understandable, insightful, and relatable. In a world where magical girls exist and get one wish each, albeit at a steep and unknown cost, originally, she uses hers to heal her longtime love interest Kyosuke against the warnings of her mentor Mami, who says to never wish for someone else's sake. While she's initially excited by this miracle, his newfound health, it eventually turns sour as the truth of her situation is revealed, how much she had to give up for this wish, and then as she has to watch her friend Hitomi date Kyosuke instead. Eventually this all leads her down a spiral of hatred in a vain attempt to not hate herself. What I initially loved about the story as a heartbroken teenager was how raw it felt. She was watching as someone she loved for years was snatched away just like that. And she was the one visiting, the one who was learning about his interests so they could share in them, the one spending countless days and nights concerned for him, but after being an emotional outlet for Kyosuke, he ends up with someone else. As someone who had a streak of similarly emotional outlet-like, in heavy quotes, relationships, I feel this. I watched as others treated the people I cared for awfully and then got to be with them instead of me. I sat on the trunk of my car at night listening to a sad song written specifically about Sayaka, brooding over what I never had but felt like I lost. She helped me to not feel alone in those moments where I didn't personally know anyone else with my pain. But skip forward a few years when I went back to the series a bit more emotionally mature and with the knowledge that no one owes anyone love, and I started to relate to a different part of Sayaka's character, to her downfall itself, not the thing that kicked it off. There's many moments where she questions herself and her motivations, if she's really a good person or if she's simply selfish and only wanted Kyosuke to be better so he could love her. This is what drives her downwards, desperately searching for evidence that she's a good person to disprove her own mind. I feel that. I question every single action I take in that way, wondering if I even know myself, if I'm simply a selfish entity out for fame and glory, not to spread love of series and thought through analysis. But Sayaka provides a bit of a warning against that kind of thinking. She helped and she hurt alike. In the anime's cyclical nature, good and evil balance out. But she did save someone and make them happy. Constantly questioning why did nothing but make her worse off. Sometimes that's something that we have to keep in mind. And the fact that I could, in a way, grow up with Sayaka, that I could grow more mature and come back to the series and witness her do it in the same way is props to how stellar of a character she is, and one who for sure helped Madoka Magica change my life. It also let me meet some of the kindest anime fans out there, so that's a pretty big bonus as well. Sonny Boy is the most recent addition to this set of anime. The first time I watched it, I found it exceptionally hard to think or write about the series. I felt like I was missing something the entire time, and while I did make a video on it I mostly still agree with, I found out why I had that feeling when I watched it again. I had ignored part of what Sonny Boy was saying because it scared me. The anime follows a class of students who go adrift. That is, they end up in this surreal space where death doesn't exist. Some go on journeys for thousands of years, others learn about the world and try to go home, some toil away for their entire existences, thousands of years without question, and everything else under the sun. But what we find in all of these things is a lack of meaning. It's aimless wandering and nothing more. Some characters even seek to invent death as a way out of the endless pointlessness. This was something I didn't want to recognize in the series because I'd always believed that death was not what gave life meaning. I believed that with infinite time that humans would continue to grow, we would make meaningful choices and explore every possibility, which then would create more along the way. Sure, things may look finite now, like we could discover everything, but with the advancements of endless life, we'd surely unlock more doors and ensure we'd never grow meaningless. There would always be new paths to follow. Everyone I'd ever met who believed the opposite of this tried to simply convince me of their side. But Sonny Boy did something different. It showed me how my idea was flawed. Yes, there are endless possibilities in this world, even more so than ours. They can do literally anything. But the issues they face are the same ones we do. They still toil away for nothing more than to continue existing. They still war with each other over stupid and pointless things. They still never express their feelings and miss their chance. It's just all the things we face even with infinite time. Sonny Boy is saying that yes, there are infinite possibilities, but the human will isn't infinite. There's no guarantee that we take something just because it's there. Possibility means nothing when you have no motivation, when endless time allows you to put everything off to tomorrow and a tomorrow that will never come. But back in the world they came from, our world where death exists, there's a motivation to change things. People seek to better their lives because their time is limited. To make the most of it, they have to do it now. They can't stagnate in eternity. Our limited will is utilized by limited time. No one or no thing had ever tried to show me this side of things, never made a case study of exactly how wrong I was in my judgment of human nature. Now I have a different outlook on my own limited time, one which has led me to finally try many things I never would have before. In a way, the anime convinced me to finally live the life I wanted to do the things I know I would regret never doing. So yeah, it's safe to say Sonny Boy changed my life just a little bit. Gurren Lagann is an exceptionally impactful anime, as we recently explored in our 3-part series on leadership. But having done just that, I don't see the need to repeat myself here, so instead, I'd like to talk about the other side of things, how Gurren Lagann is sort of like an anime for everyone. With both a healthy level of depth and the complete opposite end of the scale with downright ludicrous action, the anime can kind of take all comers. Want giant robots beating each other up? Right on! Want a nuanced look at what leadership is? Well, we have that too. Want some of the most memorable characters and insane lines in anime? Hop on! Want others who have somber and grounding moments of weakness, contrasting the rest of the cast and lifting the high moments even higher? Yeah, there's that too. Because all these things are present and work together, it's a series that can be loved for really any reason. And that makes it a great series to introduce people to, a great series to bring up with anyone, a great series to bond over. And that's what it was for me. I asked a friend at my Yu-Gi-Oh! Locals years ago if they knew any good anime I should watch, and Gurren Lagann was the first thing out of their mouth. They described it as something ridiculous with one of the greatest characters ever in Kamina, and they were right. It was kind of like how I used to describe it as the manliest man to ever man. Now I'd choose to highlight other elements of it in my description, but what mattered in that moment was it was something we could appreciate together. It made conversation easier for someone awkward like me. The memorable quotes were an easy reference, and the action something perfect to gush over. Then I became the one recommending it to my friends, one of whom I ended up doing a group cosplay with. I was Viral and they were Kamina. For someone who ended up being my best friend for a time, this was an amazing experience. It gave us both a reason to work on cosplay together, something they had previously done and I was still relatively new to. We were already planning on going in some way and doing some group thing, but the instant they watched the series, we both knew what we had to do. It made up our minds for us. Having something homemade and meaningful like that to wear really improved my entire experience at that local convention too. It made it all feel worthwhile. Gurren Lagann made my friendships better. Are there anime I like better than it? Yes, there's quite a few. But none of them had ever the same kind of global effect of bringing me closer to people quite like Gurren Lagann did. And that's something the series deserves an endless amount of credit for at the end of the day. Now, naturally, before we move on to our number one spot, I have a few series I want to give some quick blurbs to. First, there's Tokyo Ghoul, which was one of the original anime that made me really want to sink my teeth into a series along with Psycho Pass, although I did so for Tokyo Ghoul in a technical way rather than a thematic one. While the series isn't perfect, it's a really great set of 12 episodes that ends in one of the most stunning displays of storytelling, throwing the entire way the main character lived their life back in his face and showing them it was wrong in brutal fashion. The line, "It took a lot of blood for you to learn that lesson," still sits with me years later. Neon Genesis Evangelion could also make this list, especially as the anime I returned to YouTube with in 2021 after thinking the channel was dead, but I don't think I'm fully positive on the series. It did an excellent job at exploring depression and making it able to be felt by the audience, and that taught me that not every beloved story needs to have a life-changing message. Some just say go outside and try not to be sad. But researching Ono also showed me that a lot of the things I hated about his creation were things I recognized in myself. So maybe one day Evangelion could be on this list, but that would be a day after I've worked on my own issues. Steins Gate is an anime that, had I watched it earlier, would probably be on this list. It's one of my few 10 out of 10s, and it says a lot of things that often aren't covered. It shows the dangers of technology in contrast to its benefits, this impact a single life can have on the world through simple actions. And then there's Okabe, who is a character who copes in a typically unhealthy way, but it does him and others good, so is it really an issue? It explores these ideas, but they were things I'd already witnessed and felt in my own life, and so it was more of a validating experience than a life-changing one. But it did change the fact that no one can ever peacefully drink Dr. Pepper around me again, so there's that. And then for an odd pairing, there's either Nichijou or Trigun, which could also take the spot that Gurren Lagann holds, because they were anime I watched at my university's anime club and ended up having positive experiences and friendships from, but Gurren Lagann did that earlier and in a way that's really unique to the series itself, not the situation I watched it in. And then finally there's Violet Evergarden, an anime that I had very recently watched. I think that's the only thing keeping it off of this list, is that I have yet to fully comprehend my feelings on it. But the story of someone who doesn't understand emotions going on a grand journey to understand them, and especially those 3 simple words as part of it, is something endlessly relatable to me in an anime that will for sure stick with me forever if it isn't on this list right now. But anyway, we can move on to that fabled number 1 spot. Just as Psycho-Pass was the only way to start this list, Black Lagoon is the only way to end it. My story with Black Lagoon is one of pure chance. It was August of 2020. The world was in shambles. I'd graduated college right into the thick of it all 3 months earlier, and 3 jobs in a row that I was all but guaranteed were closed due to all of it. I spent that time drifting through life, mostly making videos that netted minimal channel growth. I loved doing it, but knew I would never be able to reach levels that would be needed for my passion to become sustainable. Then I made a video on Rock from Black Lagoon, and nothing happened. For 22 days, it sat there with a couple hundred views, as every video had. Then, one Sunday morning, I woke up at a friend's place to this. The largest spikes I'd ever seen in my analytics, and still the largest to this day. It blew up overnight, now sitting just under 500,000 views, and still averaging the most daily views on the channel since. It was the first time I'd ever had a series popular enough for me to go back to justify watching it again, and go back I did, having now made 15 videos on the 29 episode anime. I'm glad I had a reason to go back, because sort of like with Sonny Boy, my second take really allowed me to appreciate the anime. It's something with an unparalleled level of character development. Even with the sometimes ludicrous action and gore, it creates characters which feel more real than any other series I'd ever witnessed, anime or not. They're perfectly flawed in ways that really reward deeper watching, but don't necessarily need to. It's still perfectly entertaining either way. They lie to each other rather than show weakness, because this is a cruel world. They think they understand each other when they don't, because they've never really tried to. They try and fail to change the world around them and are shaped by these failures, and then the arc-based nature of the stories allows for a revolving door of villains full of their own depth, and then parallels to deepen the constants of the cast. And a large part of this, and something that the series deserves a lot of praise for, is its incorporation of history to back up these characters. There's Roberta, who grew up in the wake of Colombia's La Violencia and was shaped by FARC and the drug trade. The Romanian twins who had their lives stolen by Nicolae Ceausescu's policies of forced birth. Takanaka, who explores the Japanese Red Army and its terrorist activities. And Balalaika, the former Soviet captain whose entire character is shaped by the worst of the Soviet Union and its fall and war in Afghanistan. All of these characters are unique and interesting on their own, but author Ray Hiro drops hints as to their history throughout the development of each one, leaving a thread to be pulled which expands immensely on already amazing characters. Researching into the breadcrumbs left behind, I found stories I'd never known existed that gave me a much deeper appreciation for history and how we can hold on to and learn from it. I'd never known about La Violencia and its ripples through Colombian society, or how some Japanese student protests in the 60s and 70s somehow led to the creation of one of the most egregious terror attacks in the modern age, or how the Soviet-Afghan War changed the entire world, or how an entire generation of children was forced to be born and then left behind in Romania. And all of it is perfectly represented in their characters. All of their motivations track back to these bits of history. Black Lagoon gave me a better perspective on the world because of this, and in a similar way with its pushing my channel forward, it did so in another way. Because it blew up here, I've met people from India, from Belarus, from Germany, from China, from all over the world, And meeting all of them has allowed me to check my own perspective, to not let my own story go to my head too much, because we all have one which changes based on the history of where and when we are, just like it does for the characters of Black Lagoon. And the history and community and deep characters isn't even mentioning all the impactful and lingering messages that the anime incorporates that I've learned from. There's too much to even mention here about this series. It may be one of the most positive things to ever happen to my life. It grew my channel, and made my bleak future look a lot more healthy and bright, and helped me explore deeply humane and personal concepts to grow as a person and expand my mind. It let me make friends all over the world and bring together an amazing and supportive community. I guess this is the point where I say thank you, Black Lagoon, and thank you, Hero. I don't think you'll ever see this, but your work has changed a lot of lives for the better. But that's much more than enough about me for today. This is really just a collection of a lot of thoughts I've had recently about how impactful stories can be that I've never really compiled into one video before, and I think this was an interesting way to do that. But I'd like to hear your take on this as well, if there are certain series that really changed your life, whether anime or not, and kind of what they taught you or how they were impactful to you, because as we saw here, it doesn't have to just be, say, a message in the series you learned from, but it can be the time and place of the series or something about it that really connects people, and there's just a lot of beautiful things they could do, and I'd love to hear what they did for you as well, because I don't want to talk anymore about myself, because I kind of hate doing that at times. But I'll stop doing that and leave you with 4 important links in the pinned comment below. We'll have Twitch, Twitter, Discord, and most importantly, Patreon, where you can get your name at the end of videos like these lovely people above me right now. But anyway, I'll just say thank you very much for watching this personal video, and I hope I'll see you again soon.